Hey guys, it's Josh with Project Idea again, where we put ideas into action. Today we're going to be working on a costume build that I had for my son. He wanted to go as a uh, Attack on Titan character this year. So this is the ODM gear that I was building for it. So I'll show you how we did that. First, I used some foam, and of course cut it out in the shape of what the handles were going to be, and I actually sliced it in half, make it not quite as thick. And I did the same thing here with the little lever that goes on the handle. All this is just cosmetic purposes only anyway, and it'll all fit together kind of like that right there. I had some leftover acrylic and I cut that down for the blade. It is a little floppy, but it worked well for what we were doing here. And I cut down the handle about halfway in the middle here. That's going to allow the blade to go down inside there, and I will glue all that together here in just a little bit. After all that's cut down, that's kind of what it looks like right there. I then drilled the holes in the handle as well, and split the lever down just a little bit smaller than the width of the handle. Then I just rounded everything off with the sander. On the acrylic blades here, I tapered the end just a little bit, just to be more like a blade would be. Of course, if you've ever seen an Attack on Titan, the blades are very thin. They look kind of like a razor blade in a way. Trimmed up the rest of those holes there with a little Dremel type tool and hot glued everything together here. I glued the blade into the handle. Now, if you'll notice on the clamps there, I didn't want the clamp to actually imprint anything on the foam that I was using. So I used some scrap foam just to keep that from making any kind of impression. That's everything glued together there. After that, I sealed it all with wood glue. Make sure to get a good seal on this. I'll be honest, there's a couple places on here when I did this and I did some spray painting on it. It did damage a little bit of the foam, but it ended up working out okay. Here I spray painted all the acrylic there, just a silver color, and then to make the marks on the blade I used a Sharpie and then sealed it up with clear coat. As you can see here, I painted the handle silver as well, the silver spray paint, and then used like a dark brown color. You could use black, whatever color you got there, just to paint over top of that. Next, I had to work on the holsters, I guess you would call it, on the side of the characters there. And on these, you have to do a lot of cutting. I cut down some foam mats, all the same size. It takes several pieces of this. So as you can see, I've also got a bunch of scrap there. On those scrap pieces, I cut each of those down as well and cut off all those little edges, because this is all going to go in between each layer of the other foam. After that other paint had dried, I went ahead and sealed that with a clear coat. And then here I went back to making the rest of those holsters. Of course, I hot glued each of these pieces in. One for each edge. Then I measured exactly where the sword will be going into this holster, just to make sure that I had that in the right position, and I glued that in place as well. All in all, you're going to have enough places in this to be able to put 6 blades in there if you wanted to. Of course, it's just a process, one right after another, repeating the same process. It took a lot of time doing this, but I just glued each layer together. That's one layer, and you end up having to make basically 3 more of these, one right on top of the other. And of course you make 2 of these total assemblies, so like I said, it was a lot of foam to go through. I just trimmed the pieces after I glued it on, and all said and done, this is about what it looked like. And I used this cardboard tubing here and just cut that down to the right size that I needed. This is going to be the cylinder that goes on top of the ODM gear. This right here is the cylinder that I'm making for the back. It goes behind his back. I glued all that around another one of those cardboard tubes. Kind of held it steady that way. And then to close off the ends, I just went ahead and traced around it and made some ends to go on there and hot glued all that together. All in all, this build is mostly hot glue and foam. I could have done some finishing and used the clay finishing technique to get rid of a lot of these edges and such, but I was on a time crunch. I would recommend doing something like that. If you need to check out my other build, my Destiny 2 hand cannon build, the Sunshot cannon, the part 2 actually explains a little bit about that. Here I was working on putting the belt connection to the cylinder. As you can see, that edge on the cylinder didn't really matter because I had that belt that was going to go around that. And I also put Velcro on this after heating it up and curving it. But just a forewarning on this, what I should have done on that Velcro is actually go ahead and make the entire thing all the way around Velcro, just so it wouldn't break or anything like that. And later on in this video, you'll see that I actually go ahead and do that because I am afraid it would not be strong enough to hold everything. But here's the Velcro. As you can see, when I glue this on here, I don't put it all the way to the end because I'm going to have the little piece at the end of that belt part right there. That's supposed to look like the piece that shoots the grappling hook out. Alright, here I had a scrap piece of that same cardboard tubing just to trace and cut in order to fill the hole in the back of what would be the cylinder on top of the ODM gear. As you can see, fits perfectly in there, and I just hot glued that in place. Now for the front of the cylinder, I just used some water bottles. Just cut the end off of there and ended up just hot gluing that in place. And I cut a couple of strips of craft foam down just to go around the edge of that so it wouldn't look so rough. All this is going to get painted in a little bit anyway, so then I hot glued all that in place. The bottle top first, and then the little craft foam strip around that. Next, I was gluing the cylinder on top of the ODM gear. I used a whole lot of hot glue on this build. Then I had some more of those scrap pieces of the foam floor mats. I used this kind of like the part that holds the cylinder on, and I just hot glued all that in place. Like I said, I went through a lot of hot glue on this. Here's where I repaired the back part, or fixed that where it would not tear, by putting some more of the strapping around there. I used a lot of Velcro on this, just because I didn't have any actual straps. In certain places on here you don't really need Velcro, but I used straps, or I used the Velcro as a strap. I just used what I had though. Right, here's the piece I was telling you, kind of goes on the end of that belt piece there, and we just glued those in place as well. After it's all said and done, I spray painted the whole thing with silver spray paint, and that's pretty well mostly done. Right here I glue on the Velcro straps. Like I said, in this place, if you have any kind of straps, it would be a whole lot better. And to reinforce all that, I used a lot of hot glue when gluing that on, just because I really didn't want that foam piece to break. I would definitely recommend putting something there to strengthen it. I might should have put something underneath that foam to strengthen it, but it worked out okay for what we was using. And I just measured that out and hooked it to the other side as well. All this will be hooked to the belt all together. I ended up using paracord for the cords to go in between it all, and that's pretty well it. Thanks guys, I hope you like this build. Like, comment, and subscribe.